Hey, Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
Oh, likewise. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you for signing up to do it.
Well, I'm glad to oblige. You guys have been one of my favorite bands for so long now, and it's an honor to be able to help promote the brand new album, which is coming out next week.
Well, we appreciate that. So anything that we can do, happy to have a chat and do whatever. So let us know.
Oh, awesome. Well, of course, the new album, The Dark Hereafter, is coming out next week through Candlelight. How did the writing process for the new album come about?
Well, I mean, we never stopped writing, really. So at the moment, we are probably 2 albums ahead of our release schedule. So I don't think there was a specific, right, let's sit down and write The Dark Hereafter. We just continued to write after our last album, Divination of Antiquity, and we never stopped, really. You know, we try and meet up at least once a week, either for rehearsing or to do some writing, and just kind of make sure we're all playing at home and kind of keep the ideas flowing, really. Obviously, the concepts change album to album slightly, so they look at different issues from a different perspective, but in terms of the writing process, you know, we just try and keep it going all of the time. You know, we've got lots of creative energy, I think, between the 4 or 5 of us that there are now. And, we just like to kind of keep the ball rolling, you know?
And I'm glad to see that you guys are that inspired to be able to keep writing like that, where it doesn't seem like there's much of a downtime.
No, and I think, you know, we've all got busy lives as well with everything we're going on with families and work and all those kinds of things, that you have to make time for these kinds of things and to be creative. And I think lots of bands have a tendency to procrastinate, or at least the ones I know. They'll do an album and then they'll go and play a few shows, and then, you know, 2 years later they'll think, oh God, we need to write another album. So I like to think that we're never in that position, and that we have the time behind the scenes to be a little bit more self-critical of the material that we're writing, and to be able to make sure that it's the best stuff that we're putting out, and not just throwing out the first ideas that we have, or make sure we're not just going into the studio with 7 half-finished ideas and trying to make an album out of it, you know? So I think it's important, you know, people care about the music we make, and we care about the music we make, and we don't want to put rubbish music out. So I think as fans of music, as fans of bands, we always know, as you probably do, when bands have gone off the boil and don't put out a great album. And I think that we try to be self-critical of each other enough that we hope we're never going to do that.
Yeah, and I was going to say that from a fan perspective as well, because I noticed with every album, it seems like you guys are just getting tighter and tighter, and the songwriting is getting with that as well. And with The Dark Hereafter, it definitely has that approach with it. I mean, with 5 songs on this album, it just sounds absolutely incredible what you guys are doing this time around.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, you know, we obviously care about it a lot. I just think you have to. You know, you get a chance once every 2 years, or however long it is, to put an album out and to engage people in the concepts you're talking about, and maybe the message you have to spread, the important messages that are behind the songs. And I think if you don't do that in a way that engages people on all levels, you know, you can be as intellectual as you want with your lyrics or with the concepts you're talking about, but if it's delivered through subpar music, then it's never going to resonate with people. If you make great music but the lyrics are nonsense and sing about beer or Satan or whatever it is, then it's not always going to chime with people. So I think you have to have both things, and to be really critical of yourselves in what you're writing, and make sure that it has a purpose and you're not just writing for the sake of it, and that you challenge yourselves in some way as well, I think. So I don't think we're ever going to massively depart from what the core sound of the band is, but I think we try and evolve it in certain ways, tightness, or longer songs this time, more expansive use of instrumentation within the songs, slightly different style in a few of them, lots of choral vocals, different vocal techniques, different time signatures, all those kinds of things that build around the core sound but ultimately broaden what you can do with the songs.
Yeah, and again, that's what really draws me into the band, is not only being able to diversify yourself while keeping that core sound musically, but the message of what you guys are going for with every album is something that I can really get behind.
Well, I'm glad. It's, you know, I think from lots of people's perspectives, metal can be lots of things, can't it? It can be, I don't know, it can be silly, can't it? It can be Steel Panther, and it can be Tenacious D and all those kinds of comedy metal or whatever you want to call it. But it can also be serious and poignant, or it can also be amazingly skilled and absolutely technical, or it can be simple as you like, groovy sorts of music. So there is a really wide spectrum of things you can do with metal, and I think that for ourselves, what we try and do is kind of play with atmosphere and emotion a lot, and I think that really helps connect with the beauty and the sorrow of the tales that we're telling as a band, and it seems to resonate with people when we do that, and it resonates with us, and I think that's what matters. It's about, without sounding too wishy-washy, it's about a spiritual connection with music, with place, with stories, with meaning. And I think that if you have that in the songs that you make, then it will only stand you in good stead, I think, and help other people to kind of follow you on that journey.
And what would you say the message is this time around with Dark Hereafter?
Well, I mean, the band's always had a theme of nature running through every album, as I'm sure you're aware from the covers and from the aesthetic. So this one's no different, really, other than it comes at it from a slightly different perspective. And also, as ever, we sort of discuss issues in the lyrics that are of political and social importance as well. So if you've ever read the lyrics in any deep and meaningful way, then there's always a story that they're telling, but there's always a sort of behind the scenes kind of story as well, as a sort of second meaning within the lyrics. So I think this time, the lyrics and the concept, I don't know how you want me to talk about it track by track, or just in general?
Whatever you feel like talking about.
All right, well, I'll give you, there's only a few tracks, so I'll give you the insight into the track. So
sure.
In terms of the lyrics and the concept then, the title track, The Dark Hereafter, it sort of discusses, I'm not going to say post-apocalyptic, because it's not supposed to be like hyper-real or anything, but it discusses the aftermath of bad decision-making, I think. And it discusses how our greedy, power-hungry government decision-making has led to forceful reactions from places we've invaded, we've bombed, we've tried to control over the years. And the kind of the hereafter that we're talking about that's dark is the aftermath for those people, the aftermath of what happens as a result of those actions. And so I know we see, talking about the US and UK governments, probably because we collaborate a lot, some of the atrocities that we create, never mind some of the things that we see coming back. We go and invade people's countries, we try and steal their resources, we try and overthrow their governments, we try and privatise their public services and all those kinds of things, and then we wonder why we get terrorism in our societies, or we get social upheaval, or, like we've seen in Europe quite a lot recently, displacement of lots of people that we've invaded, wanting to kind of get out of the places that we've invaded. So the Dark Hereafter, in that sense, is the aftermath of bad political decision making, and that can either be social or in people, or it can be in other ways. So there's a song called Green Cathedral on the album, which is about how we should look towards localism rather than globalism in our daily practices. And I guess by doing so, kind of curtail the impending environmental struggles of the future. So if you think about global business as it stands at the moment, lots of businesses are very unaccountable and very wasteful, cut down lots of trees for packaging, dig up lots of oil for plastics and all those kinds of things. And I think if we as consumers and people, we haven't got lots of power on our own, but if we make better decisions in our lives, we don't buy from big chain supermarkets, we don't buy from huge name brand stores, then bring things a bit more locally, buy from a local producer, or try and grow your own food, or all those kind of things, then the big businesses haven't got as much demand, and so won't deforest the world as much, or they won't dig up as much oil, or whatever it might be. And I think that if every person made that kind of change in their life, then then we would live in a slightly better world. Pariah's Path, which is the second track, it's fairly straightforward in that it deals with our need to ostracize our so-called political leaders and make them pariahs for what they're doing in the world, and it just talks about the lonely journey of being a pariah. And then Ensigns of Victory, which is the third track, is about it's a little bit linked to a song we did from the last album called Warrior Herd, a similar kind of concept, but it basically means that there's always an evil behind the flags of war. We send our troops off to various countries to do the biddings of our government, usually under pretense that they're protecting our homes or our families from tyranny, and it's all shrouded in the knowledge that we're bringing democracy to them, or that we're liberating them from dictatorial rule or something. And usually our flag to them is a force for corporate evil. It's normally sponsored by some kind of companies who want to go and steal their resources, or some building company that wants to go and redevelop their country and make loads of money out of it. And it can serve as a sort of symbol for exploitation. So the Ensign of Victory really is the kind of, we've come and beat you under the premise that we think we're doing right, and we stick our flag in, and it almost serves as a kind of domineering signal of our force over yours and our will over yours, and I think that can be a bad thing, really. So wrapping all those things up, you get to this premise of a dark hereafter, wherein various different elements of bad policy and decision making ultimately lead to people's lives being very challenging in different parts of the world, and indeed in our own, you know.
Yeah, and it's amazing to be able to hear that track by track, because I was picking up on a lot of those themes as I listened to the album, but being able to hear it explained by you, and of course us living in 2016 with all of these evils that are going on in the world. I mean, it's amazing to be able to hear the emotional power musically and lyrically of what you guys are doing and getting that message out there.
Yeah, well, I hope it has an impact on some people. I mean, I imagine that lots of people relate to it in different ways. Obviously, some people will just relate to it because they like the music and the emotion. Some people will relate to it because they like the message. Some people will relate to it for none of those reasons, and I don't know, they just like the concept of the band or whatever. But I think we're only a kind of small band at this point with reasonably limited reach. So I'm just hoping that it affects people enough that they can go on and inspire other people or make them create something of their own or make a change in their own life, and slowly we'll start to get there as a human race and realise what we're doing is detrimental.
Yeah, I can definitely say for myself, I was first drawn into the band musically because I loved the emotion and the atmosphere that was going on with the music, but then once I started to pay more attention to the lyrics, that's when I really started to get more inspired and fell in love with the band that much more over the years.
I'm glad. Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's nice to know that it has an impact on somebody, and I think that, I don't know, you can go and protest your government, can't you, and go and stand in a big crowd and shout about various different issues, but does that really make any change? Or does the change come at a person-by-person level by influencing? Is the way of making political change through shouting on the streets, or is it through, I don't know, being a bit more direct in your action in your life? Ultimately, if lots of people do something, then everybody else has to react, and I think that's the only way really now that we can ever make any change as people. So if we can affect anybody with this, then I think we've done our job right to some extent. And
that's why I agree with that sentiment so much, because of course there is so much protest and everything going on in the world right now, not just in the United States, but all over the world. But it seems like the issues change so quickly because of media that they forget about the issue that they were just protesting. And the idea of just making those fundamental changes in your life to make the world a better place is such a better way to go about things.
Yeah, I think so. And I think what you have to realise about media is, well, I might just be teaching you something you already know, but obviously media is only ever owned by 5 or 6, 10 maybe different people who've got vested interest in the outcome of national affairs. And if you follow media and you follow what they're saying, then they have to lead with something different every day. They're trying to sell advertising space. They're trying to influence the way that people live their lives and the dynamic of society. And actually, we've all now got access to billions and billions of other people in the world through the internet, and you're able to research things on your own and draw your own conclusions rather than just listening to the opinions of 10 different news channels or 10 different news channel owners globally that tell you the same things, even if you live in different countries. So I think the only way we can really make change is to do it at a grassroots level. And I think, well, looking at your own government, at the moment, you see people like Bernie Sanders have been kind of pushed out of the presidential race, and that just really shows that there's an undercurrent in your country of lots of young people who seek political change, but there's so many older people who've got lots of vested interests in things that they've almost kind of pushed him out through all of the negative spin and the negative PR that's gone on. And while he might not be the guy, I think he represents the regular man versus the sort of corporate machine almost. And similarly in this country, there's people like Jeremy Corbyn, who's a leader of the left-wing party here, very much kind of at the negative end of the media portrayal, basically. And it's quite obvious that you see people supporting this stuff outside of the media push, really. And I think we're getting to a turning point in society where people on the whole are starting to wise up to the influence that media has. And I think within our lifetimes, we'll probably start to see that come away at the seams a little bit. And there's only so much control that media can have, I think, with an ever more connected world of socially and politically aware people, I think.
And with that, since I'm obviously not living over there, what is the portrayal of the United States over in the UK?
Well, probably the same in the opposite direction that you see of us. I imagine Americans see British people as kind of all posh and based out of London and I don't know, very twee and all that kind of stuff. And I guess the portrayal of the US people is that I don't know, Hillary good, Trump bad. We're all kind of yeehaw Americans that like to fire our guns and you know, praise Jesus and all this sort of stuff. You know, it's all very top line, isn't it? Obviously, if you know people personally, that you know that there's way more intelligence out there than that. But again, I think that's the way we kind of divide and conquer people, isn't it? Our media tell us different things about different cultures and try and scare us into thinking that we'd never want to live there, or those people don't quite get it, and you know, they must be stupid for doing that. And actually, we never really fully understand the dynamic of politics of people within certain countries because of the way that they're portrayed in the media.
And that says a lot about society too. I mean, it is a great thing with the invention of the internet and being able to reach out to billions of people and read the articles for yourself rather than just having to listen to what you see on TV or the major internet sites, where you actually could go out there and discover all of these things for yourselves. But because the internet is such a relatively new thing in perspective of human society, it's taking a long time for people to be able to catch on and really start to think for themselves when they're so used to the newspapers, magazines, TV telling them what they're supposed to think.
Yeah, I agree, but then again, you know, they called our parents' generation, the sort of people who are kind of 50, 60 years old now, they called them the baby boomers, didn't they?
They did.
And actually, there's way more of that generation still than there is of our generation, the kind of 18 to 35-year-olds. And so we haven't, you know, through medical advances and through better universal healthcare for people, we have an aging population. And some of those people have never strayed into the internet realm. They didn't grow up with computers. They didn't grow up with smartphones. You know, they struggle through using some of that technology. And so I think that it's an inevitable byproduct of an aging society, and some that have never really kind of involved themselves in the digital realm. There's still a lot of analog people out there, you know, and I think because of that, traditional media outlets still communicate a lot to the older generation. So as our children maybe grow up and become the people who are fighting for change in their countries, then I think we'll start to see things change. But there has to reach a point of critical mass, basically, because there's too much kind of inequality in the world, and there's too much trouble in the world because of how we're kind of raping and pillaging the environment, as well as profiteering off the labour and happiness of most people.
Yeah, and that is the sad reality, and it would be an amazing thing for the world to be able to realize this as a whole at some point and try to make the changes in the world to make sure that our species can still be alive in the future.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't think that's our parents' generation that's going to do that. I think they're the people who are very protective of the way things are, of the status quo. And I suppose one of the formative reasons for us doing Winterfylleth was to help reconnect people with the fact that we've probably gone through these struggles numerous times throughout the history of mankind, and that we seem to consciously not learn from these decisions because there's always an agenda behind what's going on. So you know, lots of things go on, you know, wars on drugs and all this sort of stuff. And actually, if you took out the people that were fighting wars on drugs, actually there would be no problems. Like Portugal, for example, legalized all of its drug use, and so it then decriminalizes the act of it, and therefore no one can profiteer off it anywhere near as much as they can in our societies. And so there's always some kind of better way of doing something to make it beneficial for people. And I think a lot of the time governments or people in power don't want things to be beneficial for people, because then they lose control of society. So it's only going to be our generation that does that, and as the famous saying goes, you know, the revolution will not be televised, will it? It's going to come from grassroots people making decisions in their own lives and it not being shown on television. I mean, hell, look at all that stuff that's going on in, is it Dakota, with all that kind of oil pipeline stuff that's going on in the United States at the moment?
Yes.
You know, that's not getting any coverage on television, is it? As far as I'm aware, there's lots of kind of internet stuff popping up about it, but I believe there's kind of media blackout and government blackout on that because they don't want to kind of wise up to the fact that they're oppressing another subgroup of people within your country, you know. So it's I don't know, it's a chaotic world, I think, and we have to be mindful of that, and I guess how we bring up our own children and what we equip them with, you know, in terms of how they negotiate the world.
Yeah, and again, bringing this back full circle, I'm glad that you are able to bring these ideas to mind with the band, because you just never know who could listen to your music and be inspired by the lyrics that you say. Sometimes it's in a good way, sometimes it's in a bad way. But I'm glad with this band it might inspire people to want to make a change for the better.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think, lots of people think that one single person or one group can go out and change the world. And maybe you can in some unique instances, but most of the time it's going to be you affecting the direct people that you're involved with and them affecting the people that they're involved with, and it being incremental rather than wholesale change in opinion, and opinions have to sway, and we'll get to a point where it is too late to go back, and we will have deforested the world too much, and there will be kind of too much destruction that's gone onto our oceans and all these kind of things that are really important for the next generation. I think that there has to be if not a kind of physical uprising, certainly a revolution of the mind that pushes our populace into thinking differently about how they interact with the world and what that means for going forwards. And I think, relating back to Winterfylleth again, that's why we've always talked about culture and history, because even if you don't like the idea of national identity or of cultural identity, and you see those things as negative, even a knowledge of all of those things can help you with the struggles of what's going on now. You don't have to like them to understand them, or to understand what they strove to achieve, or what was negative about them, and how you can relate that to the modern world. You can always turn a negative into a positive. I think even it makes you think about a different political position or a different way of doing something. It's better that people think about these things and we come to a consensus rather than us just all blindly going on with our lives and consuming to the detriment of our planet. So we've got a little bit eco-warrior here, haven't we? It's all food for thought, isn't it?
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, you guys are one of the bands that really helped me to inspire to want to make a bit of a change, even if it's just on a small scale like I do, just wanting to try to make the world at least a better place in as small amount as I can. And if that helps inspire others like your band and others like yours that have inspired me, I think that's definitely a great thing.
Yeah, I think there's nothing complex about it. It's just people getting together and thinking better than they're told through 10 different media outlets, isn't it?
Oh yes. So getting things back a little bit into the band, I noticed that there are some live performances that you're going to be doing towards the end of the year, and that's great to be able to see that the new songs are getting performed live.
Yeah, we've got some release shows that we're doing next weekend, actually, as it goes. So in 10 days' time, not even that, 8 days' time, 9 days' time, whatever it is. So we're playing some shows, one in London, which is obviously a big city for us to play in, and one in a bit of a random place, which is on the south coast of England called Plymouth, just a kind of a fairly low-key show. But we wanted to do some things around the release of the record, just so that people could come and pick the record up from us and not from a record shop, or not from the web store or whatever, and come and see some of those songs live and to connect with them a little bit more. And then once we've done that, there's not a huge amount going on before the end of the year, really. Got a couple of festival performances that we're doing, one in Holland and one in Germany, and then more or less gearing up to a little bit more activity probably the beginning of next year. I think a couple of the guys are reasonably new fathers with little ones, so they've had less ability to kind of go touring really until they're a little bit older. So next year is going to probably be the time where we do a lot more summer festivals, a bit more extensive touring, and try and spread the message a little wider.
With not being able to do full-scale touring year-round, is it harder to be able to pull off the live show, or is it because you guys get together weekly and are able to write and keep the songs going that the songs are easier to perform live?
I mean, we have done lots of touring. We probably do an average of like 50 shows a year or something. So we're fairly busy, and we rehearse most weeks when we're not writing extensively, or when we've not got or when we've got something coming up. I don't know. We've done lots of touring. We've played lots of big stages. I think we're comfortable with playing with each other, and we know our material well, and we listen to it when we're not with each other and things like that to make sure we're kind of all on the ball with it. But you just got it's just our passion, isn't it? And we've been doing it a long time now. We've all got to a place where we're pretty good at our instruments, and we know what Winterfylleth is. So you just got to go out there and deliver it. I think we always make sure we're well rehearsed and everyone knows the songs, and everyone has such an intrinsic part in writing them that it's never just three guys learning some other guy's song sort of thing. So it's kind of inbuilt within all of us that the material's always there.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it, too. I mean, whether it's from the first album or it's from the Dark Hereafter, I mean, just making sure that you pick the right songs to play live and being able to rehearse them the best you can, that makes for such a great live experience for the band and for the audience.
Yeah, I think so. But also, I think because we can't play all the time, we always try to make it, an occasion when we do play. So special merchandise or exclusive songs or things like that make it a bit more special for people, because I think you can fall foul sometimes of touring too much. On the flip side of us not being able to do it all the time, I mean, partly through choice and partly through obviously the rest of our lives having to go on as they do.
Oh, sure.
You can oversaturate yourselves. So those bands that need to go on tour all the time, that have to do 200 shows a year, there's only so many places that you can go, and there's only so many rock clubs in America or the UK or Europe or whatever, and you'll quickly find yourselves back there again. And I think that lots of bands that rely on playing music for their income really fatigue their audiences and don't make great records as a result, because they're spending too much time focusing on it as a job rather than as a passion. And I think that if you retain the passion and you retain your desire to make great stuff that's important rather than having to do it to sustain yourself, then I think you'll find the results are quite different.
And that is a great approach to it. And of course, that old saying of quality versus quantity, I mean, it definitely applies when you're writing music, and it definitely applies when you're talking about live touring.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But I think just being self-critical, I know lots of bands that have gone into the studio with half-finished ideas and not come out with a great record, and that's because they haven't spent the time on it. And just making sure that, is that riff a bit of a filler in between those two good riffs, or could we do that better, or should we put this idea down for now and go on to something else? And I think you have to do those things. And sometimes, as I say, if you do music seriously as a career, then you haven't got the flexibility to make those decisions. You have to, that'll have to do. We've got to put an album out in 3 weeks. We need to get it recorded, and it's got to be in the mastering office in 2 weeks' time or whatever. It's undue pressure, I think, and you all see bands suffer because of that, I think. And you just look at all those career bands, even though they're massive, like bands like, I don't know, Megadeth or Metallica or whatever, have they put anything relevant out in their last 10 albums? Probably not. Yeah, and it's, probably why,
Oh yeah, and that does make a lot of sense. I mean, when you do get that fatigued from doing worldwide touring all the time, you're not always in that state of mind to wanting to make the best music out there. You're looking for an excuse to go out and tour to supply yourself with income.
Yeah, I agree. And well, they try and make an event out of it, obviously, but I don't know, not to pick on them, because obviously they were a classic band, but I don't even know why I'm talking about them, because they're not even a favourite band of mine. But look at bands like Metallica. Everyone's like, oh, everything up to Black Album's amazing or whatever, and then everything after that's rubbish. They've made a career out of 20 years worth of rubbish, basically, because they made it so well when they didn't have to tour all the time, and they had the space to write, and they were focusing on the music and not having to put something else out. You see all the crap they've put out recently, all these films and stuff, and all the bad collaborations with their what's his name, that Lulu album they did, all that sort of stuff. It just reeks of that to me. Not spending time on the core stuff, and it not coming naturally, and having to put it out so that you can sustain yourself. So just making sure that you practice, that you write stuff, you're self-critical, and that you have a purpose, and the music has a meaning. If it has all those things, then I don't think you can really fail with it. You've just got to have conviction to record it and stand behind it.
And once again, just to bring it back full circle to the beginning again, it's just another reason why I'm so drawn to you guys, and after doing this interview, even more so, because you really show that you do take the time to care about the music you're making, make sure it's as great as you can make it before you record it, and be proud of everything that you're going for, lyrically, musically, production-wise, everything that goes into the band.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's no doubt we've got better at those things as we've got a bit older. And there's no doubt that the songs in our first album are a bit simplistic compared to the stuff on the most recent album, but there's still a charm to that early material, and there's still an obvious progression between then and now. And we've got older and we've got better, and we've honed our craft, I suppose. And even our first album, I still think it's a good album. So it's just about sticking to your guns and not giving a shit that people think, about what they think at all, really, and having integrity. One of my favourite bands is the band Bolt Thrower from the UK.
Oh yes.
Who split up recently, and they're a kind of, I don't know, a band that would inspire me enormously, in the sense that they always had integrity, at least to an outsider. they wrote one of their greatest albums, in my opinion, Those Once Loyal, that came out in 2005, and then they followed it up and didn't like the results, basically, so they didn't decide to put it out. And then their drummer died recently, and they didn't want to replace him with somebody else just to keep touring the old songs to make money, so they decided to call it a day. And the thing that if you care about your project that much, then you should also know when to put it down and let it live. And I think, you see all this stuff like AC/DC kind of keeping going years and years after they probably should have quit, with like one original member now, and it's just give it up, let the next wave of bands come through and build a legacy for themselves. You guys have done it long enough,
And, even though it's on a much smaller scale than AC/DC or Metallica, I'm glad that you guys are still feeling that inspired to this day. And I know that you guys will find that point where if you reach that point in your career where you do want to call it a day on your own terms. But until then, I'm glad that you guys are still being inspired and putting out amazing music.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, there's still more to come. We've got a bit of a curveball coming for the next record, and that we're doing an acoustic album. I don't know if I mentioned that in the interview earlier on, or whether that was the previous one, but we've got some interesting stuff that we're planning to do, and then let's see where it goes. I've no desire to stop making music anytime soon. Lots of us have got a few other projects on the boil that'll come out around what we do in Winterfylleth. So there's lots of creativity going on here, and we hope to be able to share it when the time is right.
Oh, amazing. Well, once again, thank you for taking the time to do this. It was a complete honor to be able to have all this great discussion about music and everything outside of music in this world, and it was just a fantastic interview and an honor to be able to talk to you, to promote the brand new album, The Dark Hereafter, which comes out next week through Candlelight Records. Before we're done, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I haven't brought up yet?
No, I don't think so. That's quite in depth, actually. I'm quite pleased with that. So just thank you again for taking the time to support the band and to do an interview. I don't think bands think about this enough, but obviously we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for people like you writing these interviews and kind of coming to chat to us. So, it's very much appreciated the way around as well.